Let's get right to today's market action all over the world. We have Pete Lang Capital President. He's going to tell us why he's moving out of cash and, no, not into stocks, into the bond market. Jason Rotman, Lido Isle Advisors President, is going to tell us the safest place to put money during all this geopolitical stuff. And Mark Sebastian joining us now from the CME. Mark, let me talk about gold first. We've been talking about oil and stocks. Gold was diving like a lead balloon this morning. It's down about 25 bucks. Once the bad news came out of Ukraine, of course, the flight to safety, gold came up a bit. It still ended down. But where was it going before we got the news of Ukraine? Was it going to go further down than 25 bucks?
You know, it was looking like it was going to have a pretty ugly day, and the gold bugs were absolutely saved by that Ukraine-Russian conflict. So they can thank their lucky stars, because gold was shaping up to have just an abysmal day.
Well, how far down do you think it was going to go, Mark, beyond 25 bucks?
I think it could have dropped to, a 35 potentially. Wow. I thought there was some real potential for it to take a dive. It had a nice little rally, and I think there were some people taking some money off the table. And once you get momentum going in this market, a low volume market like we've got right now, once something starts to move, it keeps going because things are a little illiquid.
I need to get to Pete. Pete, you are a bear. Okay, so you were always concerned about what the Fed was doing to the markets. Janet Yellen is supposed to give a speech next week. We are all awaiting that. Andy Brenner in the last hour. Andy, of course, is head of international fixed income over at Alliance Securities, and he had said, forget all this Ukrainian stuff. It's Janet Yellen we have to hear. What are you expecting? Can you spin it forward for our viewers?
Well, I can agree with you more, Liz. That's a huge conference that's going to happen. And the bottom line is we're going to see much of the same from the Fed. Quantitative easing is going to come to an end here in October, and we're going to see increasing interest rates sometime in 2015. I think that's going to be the party line next week.
Well, Jason, energy certainly came back today, obviously as a result of Russia and Ukraine. But I'm wondering, ex-Russia and Ukraine, was it due for a comeback anyway?
Yes. I mean, it's obviously tough to say because that's purely hypothetical. I mean, sometimes things happen which really turn the markets, like the Russia-Ukraine incident. However, we were going nuts at the office yesterday because heating oil and gasoline, two key energy products in the futures markets, were both down 7, 8, 9 cents when an average move is, 1, 2, 3 cents. So yesterday could have been that capitulation down day when all the longs just throw in the towel. And now you have a big reversal day where the whole market says, hey, wait a minute, why are these essential energy products so low? And you have crude oil rallying, you have gasoline rallying, and, whether you want to talk about it now or in a minute, there are a couple names out there that I think are great buys in that energy sector.
We'll get to the names.
Okay, because we can then bring it back to Mark Sebastian and looking at, yes, oil did gyrate. We had it moving higher. Dave has already asked you about gold, but we cannot ignore what happened to treasuries. That 10-year yield. Treasury prices jump up as people jumped into it as a fear trade, very concerned about their cash, so they put it in treasuries. And those yields dropped about 8 basis points to 2.3%, came just barely off it. Germany's bonds, their longer-term bonds, looked very, very weak as far as the yields were concerned, too. What do you look for Monday here, Mark?
Yeah, I mean, we saw it in all the safe havens. So we saw gold pop. We saw treasuries absolutely explode. The VIX futures and the VIX itself, options on the S&P 500,
yes,
absolutely skyrocketed. So one of the things I like to say is when the U.S. sends in tanks, the VIX tanks. When Russia sends in tanks, the S&P tanks. And that's kind of what we saw. The VIX absolutely exploded on this, completely overreacted relative to how the S&P moves. So I actually think there is some real fear. There's a lot of people watching this weekend, and if nothing happens, treasuries could come off hard, the VIX could come off hard, gold could come right back down from whence it came. So I think there's a lot of oil as well. I think all those safe haven and conflict related products could really see an ugly day on Monday if nothing happens over the next couple of days.
Pete is hoping you are dead wrong, by the way, Mark, because Pete is into one of those safe havens, and I'm talking about I'm talking about bonds right now. Pete, you're not necessarily into treasuries, but you are into bonds. You're actually putting cash into bonds now. Why?
Absolutely. We've got a lot of risk out there with the end of quantitative easing, what's going on in Ukraine. These are great areas to really push towards safety. High-yield dividend stocks, high-yielding bonds. You can't go into treasuries.
Hold on. You call them high yield. Some call them junk. Does that concern you?
No, junk bonds are great as long as you're defensive. For example, our firm pushed to cash on July 28th, right when the bond market started to show weakness. So you want to move to cash 2 or 3 times a year. Keep that defensive strategy in play. You don't need to take all the money off the table. Just shoot for about 6 points over the interest-free rate, about 7 to 9% in today's market.
See, bears make investments too. They don't just hate the world. We always have to point that out. We love our bears. We also love ideas, Jason, and you were about to talk about the energy ideas that you have.
Yeah, absolutely, Liz. There's, you know, it's always a great time coming here and kind of sharing some what are typically, hopefully, very unique stock ideas. And there's a couple today. One in particular, probably maybe 8 or 9 out of 10 people have never heard of this company. It's an MLP, which stands for Master Limited Partnership. MLPs are typically found in the energy industry. They typically have a very juicy yield. This one is no different. It's called Delek Logistics Partners, DKL. The thing about this one, the market has seemed to have found this MLP this month. It's actually went up from 32 to 39. They are heavily involved in marketing, storage of crude oil and resources, etc. The thing is, why I chose Delek versus any other MLP is that relative to their peers in the MLP space, they have a much, much lower price to earnings ratio and a much, much higher earnings per share. So I think the numbers make sense for Delek, and dare I say, it's a delectable pick.
Oh, dear, dear. By the way, Pete, very quickly, we want to get your names in there. Just to, again, if we may have shown a couple of them.
Right.
Pete
Well,
Lang.
so there's Delek Logistics Partners, and then the other one is MRO, which is Marathon. Marathon's obviously a much bigger company, but Marathon for longer-term investors who want to be involved in the energy space when crude oil is what I think cheap. Crude oil under 100 is cheap, in my opinion, and that's what it is right now. You know, MRO is a phenomenal pick along with Delek.
Jason, we got them both up there. Pete Lang, want to get yours in. First of all, with a bear such as yourself picking Walmart seems to be a contradiction to me. Explain why.
Absolutely. There's some good reasons to own Walmart long term. If you look at the beta of the stock, it's down to about 0.37. That's a wonderfully low-risk stock. In addition, you've got a $16 billion stock repurchase agreement in place there. So you're going to see a lot of shares taken off the table. And finally, look at what the company's doing from a personnel standpoint. The new vice chair, Greg Penman, has been put on. Another president's been put in charge of domestic sales. So a lot of good things happening at Walmart. They can't hide from the economy, no, but they're going to push their foreign sales. They're also going to push e-commerce, and we'll see some growth there from Walmart.
See, it's a good Friday when we get good ideas. Thanks to all of you.
Thanks, gang.
Pete Lang, Jason Rotman. Mark, we're going to see you in a minute for the S&P Futures close.
Sounds like